Welcome to the Darkstream, Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and of course, Alt Hero. Thanks for tuning in. I'm very happy to be able to announce that we released Alt Hero number 2 late last night. Today is the official release date, but those of you who were actually around for last night's Darkstream may recall that we did a little sneak preview, sneak peek for everybody. Anyhow, I'm very pleased with the response that it has met with. This is not just a comic series, but it is, according to Amazon, a best-selling comic series. It's being very well received, especially when you consider the fact that the over 2,000 backers already received the digital edition in 2 different formats last night. And so, you know, despite the fact that the most hardcore fans of the series are already receiving it free, a lot of other people are also getting into it. All of our comics are 23 pages of proper comics, with the extraneous stuff, ads and whatnot. 24 pages, sorry, 24 pages. I think it technically comes to 29 pages. It's available via Kindle Unlimited, and so if you happen to be on Kindle Unlimited, you can just go ahead and download it right away, which is always handy. But I thought that you might like to go through the issue, not the whole issue, obviously, but what I've done is I've gone and put all the images from the look inside that's on Amazon, and so we can go through them here. You can ask any questions that you might like. I can't promise that I will answer all of them, but I thought that this might be a good opportunity to see what we're doing and to get a grasp on what the storyline is, who the characters are, and that sort of thing. And so this is the cover, and the cover features one of our most popular characters. She's probably one of the more iconic characters that we've got so far, and her name is Rebel, for obvious reasons. She's an Alabama girl, and as you can see, she is not particularly impressed with the fellows from the United Nations Superhuman Protective Council, who are attempting to take her into custody for reasons that you can probably imagine. This was supposed to be Alt Hero number 1, just so you realize, but unfortunately we had to replace the lead artist on it twice, and we needed to go out and find a new colorist for it. And then after the response, the generally positive response to Alt Hero number 1, we realized that we needed to get someone who actually specialized in lettering. Lettering is not a big, it's not something that everyone can actually do. I mean, the problem is anyone can do it, but it is very difficult to do it well. And so we went out, found a very good illustrator, found a great colorist, found a good letterer, and this is the result. So we actually have, this is the title page. We try to do a title page on the digital editions just so space is not quite as tight. So it lets us get the legalese out there, and also make sure that people are clear on what the actual title of the comic is. And the title of this is Rebel's Cell. There's a question, will you be going on any live streams like Ethan Van Sciver's channel? I'm happy to discuss Alt Hero with any YouTuber who discusses comics and has a reasonable audience that might not be familiar with it. So I'm always happy to discuss it. So what I'm not interested in doing, just so you understand, we had an interview with Rolling Stone back last year, and it was supposed to be about Castalia House, but we had just done the kick afterwards. We did the Kickstarter with Arkhaven, and then they ended up spinning the story to be about Arkhaven and started doing research, and then we found out that it was just going to end up being a hit piece on the right-wing entry into comics, and with people like me and Chuck Dixon and so forth. They were even talking to people that had no connection to us whatsoever. So, if I'm not interested in discussing politics when we're talking about comics. Another question here. I had that feeling with Alt Hero #1. It felt like it was missing a prologue. Do you have the first arch mapped out in your head? Yes. I have actually I have 3 separate story tracks that are involved in Alt Hero that are not connected to Chuck Dixon's directly. Chuck Dixon's Avalon is part of Alt Hero, but he's writing those stories and they're set in a specific location, which has been hinted at in Alt Hero #2. And so we really have 3 tracks, one of which is the European track, that's why we were able to, it didn't really matter which we began with because neither of those stories impacts directly on the other. So we have the European track, which is focused on the Global Justice Initiative. We have the American track, which is focused on the characters that you see in Alt Hero #2. And then we also have the military track, which you're going to be introduced to here in a few months. Although one of the characters who sort of appeared in this issue is actually part of that group. And if you think about it, you can probably guess who it was. So Rebel Cell is the name of issue #2. But the story doesn't actually begin with her. It begins with this mysterious shadow stalker, but there's a voiceover that is describing his actions from the perspective of someone who's following him. And as you can see, he is somewhat of a vigilante, not a vigilante particularly given to a lot of conversation and so forth. Here he's encountering a rather unpleasant gentleman who appears to be mistreating a nice little blonde girl. And on the next page, you can see that he is dropping off that unpleasant individual at the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office. However, you can see that this is not necessarily our world per se, because what is a UN flag doing on an ice building? Interesting. So he drops off the miscreant at the ICE office, and he then brings the little girl back to her parents. And the person who's watching him is saying he hasn't seen him do anything too massively spectacular on the physical side, and yet here he is acting as this vigilante. So he is not the only one who noticed that someone is out there stalking the night, because he finds himself cornered by a group of Antifa, and he's not terribly intimidated, and there's a bit of verbal unpleasantry between the Antifa group and the mysterious, they call him the Shadow Stalker. And so he warns them. They're unimpressed because, of course, they outnumber him. And so then they start with a 5-on-1 advantage. Doesn't slow them down because, after all, they've still got a 4-on-1 advantage. But suddenly, it turns out that there is actually something to this guy beyond the fact that he's got a pipe on him. And this becomes particularly clear when the Antifa leader throws a lock at him, and he simply crushes it in his hand. The Antifa leader flees and is then taken out with a fastball to the head. So we're coming up to the end of the preview here. I think there's 2 more pages. Let's see here. So after he, one of the Antifa thugs is still is not completely incapacitated, but we learn that the Shadow Stalker is not particularly merciful, as he promptly whacks him over the head. And that's when our unseen narrator suddenly reveals himself and explains that the gentleman is just put himself in a really terrible position because, as it turns out, the Antifa leader is actually the son of the lieutenant governor of the state. And there's going to be hell to pay because they're not going to give up. They're going to track him down. They're going to find out who he is. And he says, I can help you. Come with me. And you probably won't be surprised to know that he takes him up on his offer. Now we don't need to explain why, because we'll leave that for those of you reading the comic. And yes, that is of course a reference to the infamous son of Tim Kaine, the presidential candidate whose son is an Antifa thug. So what we're doing here is we're doing a little bit of a law and order thing. I like to keep things realistic. I like to keep things believable, even if we're dealing with superpowers, even if we're dealing with things that are beyond the ordinary. I think that stories are much more interesting when they have some connection to the real world as we experience it. The world of Alt Hero is not our world, but there are similarities because people are people, and comics are a really good way of exploring some of those issues in an interesting and innovative fashion. So, for those who were expecting political preaching, you're not going to find it. For those who are expecting, the right-wing equivalent of SJ lecturing, you're not going to find it. It was interesting because some people were commenting that they found it difficult to tell exactly who's supposed to be the good guys and who's supposed to be the bad guys. Well, if you know my perspective, then you know who I think the good guys are. But what I always try to do in my novels and what I'm trying to do in the comics is I want both the heroes and the villains to be true to their perspectives. I'm not interested in writing bad guys who are just cardboard characters. Now, you might think that those Antifa thugs are just cardboard characters. Maybe they'll turn out to be that way, maybe they're not. But the point is that within the context of that particular scene, their behavior is consistent with the way that real people in those situations tend to behave. There is a site, we have a whole forum set up. It's altherocomics.com/forum, I think. We really need to get it updated, so it's just straight up Alt Hero Comics. And I think we've also got altheroCom.com now, but we'll get that sorted out at some point in time. Right now, we've mostly been focused on just actually getting the comics themselves together and out the door with the best quality that we can. And then we also have some extras. This is some of the Alt Hero cosplay. This is one of the characters who is introduced in this particular issue, Runosation. And so, we've got a lot of great characters. In fact, one of the only complaints that we've seen in the various reviews of this issue, and the reviews have been phenomenal. I mean, I think that the average rating on Amazon is like 4.8 out of 5 or something. One of the only complaints has been that there's so many cool heroes that people aren't sure who does what and what their powers are. And one thing that you're going to find, at least with the stuff that I write, is that I'm not going to explain everything. And I'm definitely not going to explain everything the first time that you see it, the first time that you encounter it. There's already a lot of clues about things in the Alt Hero world, and not just relating to this particular Alt Hero storyline, but the other Alt Hero storylines. And it's, I mean, I'm not going to pretend, we're not talking about anything massively philosophically deep. We're not talking about subtext and that sort of thing. We're just talking about small world building details that tend to give the world more verisimilitude and make it interesting. I like it when there are not so much Easter eggs, but just small details that allow connection between the different stories, between the different characters, between my Alt Hero and Chuck Dixon's Avalon. For example, what you would not realize, I'll give you a hint here. There's a reference to a place called Tremaine in this particular issue, in Alt Hero number 2. Well, Tremaine is actually located in Avalon City. It's not spelled out in the comic. It's not something that you're going to be able to figure out from the very first issue of Avalon. But eventually, in time, these things are going to become clear. And so, the more depth there is, the more interesting the world becomes. We're not interested in simply repeating what Marvel and DC were doing, even when they were doing the Silver Age stuff that a lot of folks these days still like. We're going to do our own thing. I'm not going to follow all the rules of modern comics. Some of you have already noted in Alt Hero number 1 that we completely broke the don't show characters smoking thing. I mean, we literally broke that on page 1. In this particular issue, we broke another popular superhero rule. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll find out yourself. But the thing is, maybe some people will like our approach. Maybe some people will not like our approach. I readily admit I don't know the first thing about writing comics. I'm a novelist. But what I can tell you is that I'm the kind of novelist who writes 900-page fantasy novels without using an outline. And so a lot of what I do and a lot of what I'm bringing into my comics writing is a fairly large scope and complicated structure that is interrelated in what I hope will be a effective and entertaining way. We'll have to see how it goes over time, but I think that the initial response has really been tremendous. The initial response has really been gratifying. The thing that's most important to me is that a lot of the alt hero backers have emailed me to say, I'm really glad I backed this. I'm really happy I backed this. This is what I wanted you to do. And we're going to make mistakes. We have already made mistakes. We will make more mistakes in the future, but we will learn from them and we will correct them. And so, when people told us after the first issue, they said, we don't like the lettering. I agree. The lettering was suboptimal. So what did we do? We went out and we got a good professional letterist. I'm quite happy with the job that he did on this one. He's going to be working on Avalon next. I think I showed this last night, but I'll show it to you all again if you like, if I have it. I think I do, yes. There we go. That is one of our next digital editions to come out. That is Chuck Dixon's Avalon #1, The Street Rules. And so, we're not trying to be DC. We're not trying to be X-Men. We're not trying to be Superman. We want to do our own thing. We want to create new characters, new superheroes, and we're doing it in a new universe that is very sizable, and I think it's something that those of you who like reading comics are really going to enjoy. And I think that even some of you who don't read comics will possibly enjoy it as well. That is not Bane. Unfortunately, Chuck doesn't have the rights to Bane. I'm pretty sure that Marvel does, or DC, whatever. But these are all new characters. They're all set within the world of Alt Hero. But what Chuck is doing is Chuck is focusing on the citywide story. So I'm writing larger scope, national scope stories. One of the upcoming issues is called The War in Paris. Whereas all of Chuck's stuff is focused in the city of Avalon. Avalon is not the capital of the U.S., but it is a major city, and it's very important when it comes to what the United Nations Superhuman Protective Council is doing. So, so I think that I'll be interested to get your input. If you haven't read Alt Hero 2 yet, I'd encourage you to do so. Check it out. Post a review. Let us know what you think. Let us know if this is what you want more of. There's a question. Wasn't there going to be some kind of alt Star Wars space opera novel? Yeah, we're working on that soon. No, he's not talking about the Ember War. In fact, actually, Arkhaven is going to be publishing the Ember War, and I was just reviewing it earlier tonight. It looks really good. I think if you're a fan of Richard Fox, you're going to be delighted with it. So, no, we're not talking about Galaxy's Edge and Nicole. We're talking about something completely different. It's called Faraway Wars, and we'll probably be coming out with that in about 2 months or so. Other books that you should look out for, if you haven't read the War Dogs Incorporated books yet, if you like military science fiction, you absolutely have to read them. They're fantastic. G.D. Stark. The first book is called Battlesuit Bastards. The second one is Hunter Killer, and number 3 is going to come out very soon. We're just waiting on the cover. There's a question. John Delarose is doing the adaptation of Richard Fox's The Ember War, and I've read it. It's a good book. It's making for a very good comic, and it'll be it's going to be really interesting to see how that blend goes. You've got this very popular military science fiction book, done huge numbers on Amazon. We've got a good artist, good writer, and we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be good. So I'll take a couple questions if anyone's got any questions. Doesn't have to be. I mean, ideally should be about Arkhaven, Castalia House, the topic at hand. But yeah, I'm very excited to get Avalon #1 out. I think that Chuck Dixon fans are really going to like it. It's total classic Dixon. Somebody mentioned Superluminary. Superluminary 3 is going to be coming out probably later this week. And somebody said it's cool to see real novelists reluctantly go into comics. Well, it's something that I think we should do. I think it's something that, we live in a post-literate society. We have to adapt to that, and we have to be willing to tell our stories in other mediums. There will be paperback War Dogs novels. Someone said that Alt Hero 2 looked great on their iPad. I like to hear that. That's good news. And so, and like I said, if also we're looking for more cosplayers. So if you know anyone who looks like Rebel or Dynamique or Quantum Kitty, let us know. Let's see here. Will you adapt A Throne of Bones into a graphic novel? I would like to, but I think that is probably cost prohibitive. When will Castalia House sell hard copies to the UK? Are you talking about the Castalia Direct store? Actually, I have some good news for you there. Castalia Books Direct is going to be selling very soon to the UK. And the good news is that we worked out a deal with Ingram so that the shipping will be free. Even if you just order one comic, the shipping will be free to all the buyers in the UK. Has the unlikely happened? Has someone from a Japanese studio asked to adapt anything Castalia or Arkhaven? Not from a Japanese studio yet, but yes, we have had a number of movie-related contacts, and it's not impossible that we might even have something in the works before the end of the year. I'm not saying it's going to be possible. Someone says, a girl at my cafe looks like Dynamique. I doubt she'd do it, but she is a smoking redhead. Well, get Alt Hero number 1, show her, and tell her that we're looking for cosplayers. You never know. Can we start with Last Witch King and made original song for Arcade? That would be awesome. But I think we'd probably need to base something in Japan first before that would make any sense. Would you do a motion comic to put on YouTube with good voice actors? No. Well, I mean, we would, I suppose, but I think we've got bigger plans than that. You know, we're talking right now. We're talking to some folks about doing a full live-action movie. Can you make something about a Catholic group forming a fighting group to fight communism? No, that doesn't sound very interesting. Also, I'm not Catholic. I think we might better leave that to the Catholics. You might actually be interested in John C. Wright Sumwither because he does have a Catholic group devoted to fighting trans-dimensional astrologists who are much, much worse than communists in this particular book. A question, 12 more of War Dogs? No. 12 more issues of the Quantum Mortis, A Man Disrupted comic. So, but we may do War Dogs as comics as well. That's the artist who did the cover is actually working on a Quantum Mortis tie-in comic, a one-off called Amazon Gambit, and he's expressed some interest in doing more of that kind of stuff. So, in fact, I think the one that he really wants to do is Quantum Mortis, A Mind Programmed, which I think would make for a really great comic. But, you know, we're all busy. When's your next wine stream? I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. But you know, we didn't get the level of support required to make it a weekly event. But you know, I'll do one from time to time. So anyhow, my voice is starting to go, so I should probably let you all go. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your interest in Alt Hero, and thanks for your support for Arkhaven. And I very much hope that this has encouraged you to go ahead and check out the digital edition of Alt Hero 2 on Amazon. Thanks very much, and have a good evening.